We are going to start in 2 minutes, so everybody can start getting ready. We have a bunch of people signed on already, so we'll start in 2 minutes. Okay, Richard, if you're there, you can come on. There you are. All right, I think you're on mute.
Hey there, how?
All right, so we're gonna get started. There's a bunch of people signed on already, so we will get started, and I think we're expecting a few more, but we will get started so that we can end on time. But for those of you who are here on time, thank you. I'm really excited about tonight for a few reasons, but really, I think this topic is super, super important. I think it's something that's not really spoken about much, but is obviously a very important topic. I'm happy to be speaking about it, and I'm really excited about our moderator tonight. To have Richard with us. He will give you a little bit of background, but as he's mentioned to me on the phone, he is healthcare adjacent, meaning he has a lot of people in the healthcare world in his world. So I think he will have a lot of really great tidbits for us tonight. So I'm really excited about that. And before I introduce Richard, I'm just going to introduce myself, what we're going to be speaking about, fair meals, Richard, and then we will proceed. Tonight we're going to be speaking about obviously myself, fair meals, just the basics of reproductive health for men. We're going to do very, very basics. We're going to cover the most of the meat of this will be the nutrition, so which nutrients support men's reproductive health. And then I always like to end off with some recipes. And for those of you who are not new here, I always like to end off my presentations and my webinars with recipes, because this way is something that people can literally take home. So about Fair Meals. So we are a 501c3 status nonprofit and a free online platform offering families healthy, simple, and affordable meal solutions. So we want to empower families with nutrition education, step-by-step recipes, and budget planning to make meals healthy, easy, and affordable. And our vision is to combat America's chronic disease crisis by making healthy food an option for every family. And I mentioned this in our last webinar just because I had just heard this statistic, but I heard a crazy statistic a few months ago, and then again today spoke about it, that there is a statistic out there that 60% of children there's out on Long Island, there's a school district that took a lot of intake, and 60% of children were either obese or overweight, which is a unbelievably high statistic. So a lot of that is just not having access, but more so the knowledge and the education on how to get healthy food, and because there's so much, unfortunately, there's a reputation that healthy food equals expensive, but it doesn't have to be that way. So we're here really to kind of teach and educate and empower people and let them know that that's not the case. So a little bit about me. So I founded Fair Meals to offer nutritional guidance and easy recipes that empower families to eat well on a budget. I'm a registered dietitian, and I received my Master's of Science in Nutrition and Dietetics from NYU. I'm a mom to 2 boys and a wife, and I really know how difficult it can be to provide healthy meals for my family that are also convenient and affordable and easy, that don't take a long time. So with this resource, I really hope to help families of all walks of life. And then Richard, who is tonight's moderator, he's a television talent, radio host, and millennial messaging expert. He serves as a progressive contributor at Fox News Channel. He earned a BS in economics and a BA in international affairs from the George Washington University and is based in Washington, D.C. He also hosts the nationally syndicated Fowler Show, a weekly radio program which can be heard in more than 9.1 million homes, which is very cool. He focuses on training, equipping, and empowering the next generation of millennial and LGBTQ leaders to use their voice to advocate for change. So Richard, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and I'll pass the mic over to you. Also, before I do that, I just wanted to let everyone know, I know for those of you who are not new here, know that I usually like to start, kind of start off with some polls, but unfortunately they weren't working and I didn't want to mess around with Zoom so that I wouldn't be able to get on tonight. So we won't have any polls tonight. So that we'll have some more questions from the audience. And, Richard will let you know that questions are welcome as we proceed with tonight's presentation. So feel free to ask and Richard will be looking out for them.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Happy Tuesday. Yeah, it's Tuesday. The day's all
yes.
at this point. But yeah, like we said during the planning call, the reason why I call myself, I am not a healthcare professional, but I do feel that I'm healthcare adjacent, which is what I tell people all the time. Reason being is that I was raised by a single mom who was a registered nurse. So I always tell folks I was raised by a wild pack of nurses who taught me a lot about a lot of things. I mean, I was raised in a hospital. My mom was a NICU nurse. So I think reproductive health is so important because it really impacts the lives of children, both as soon as they come out the womb, but also throughout their lives. So I'm happy that we're having this conversation because I think it's so important of the roles that fathers play, both in the reproductive process, but also in raising their kids. So I'm so happy to get in this conversation and thank you for inviting me to be part of it. And just like you said, folks can always join us as a seat for them here at the table by simply raising their hand and asking a question, and I'll be monitoring for those. And let's get this conversation going. I'm really excited.
Okay, great. Me too. And I like that point of what you said. It's not only about during the time of when the child is before the child's born, but it's also when they're raising their children, and just the knowledge that fathers have in teaching their children best practices for nutrition. So I really think that was a great point. So we're going to learn the basics, the real basics of reproductive health for men. So why it's important. So it's important for men to protect their reproductive health and that of their partners by ensuring effective contraception, avoiding STDs, and preserving fertility, right? That's going to be the best way in order to conceive. So according to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, a third of infertility cases are caused by male reproductive issues. And, I think, a lot of women feel that it's a lot of it's on them. But really in fact, as we see, a third of it comes from the male, so it's important to kind of tackle those ahead of time and to just know that that's there. And so what are things that we can do? And there's obviously things that are out of our control, but I'm really here to talk again about what are things that we can do to make, the optimal, to bring us to optimal health. Okay, so the testicles, they produce and store sperm. The duct system, that transports the sperm, and the accessory glands, they lubricate the duct system and nourish the sperm. And then the penis is where the semen exits from. So that's just basic male reproductive system. So the hormones, so there's testosterone, which stimulates the production of the sperm, the LH, which stimulates the testosterone production. So they kind of there's like this ladder. And then the FSH is stimulates growth of testicles and promotes healthy development of sperm. So again, like I said, there's this ladder, and all of the hormones kind of rely on each other. So all three of these hormones need to be in these healthy levels in order for the next ones to work. So it's important that they all are working properly.
So I have a question about that before you go any further.
Sure.
Because I think there's so many folks. I mean, obviously, when men go to the doctor, this is sort of a very touchy subject for obvious reasons,
Mhm.
right? So if you're a man and you're going to the doctor and you are in the process of trying to reproduce, what are some questions that you should be asking your doctor about the process, right? As we're talking about testosterone levels and you're talking about FHS or FSH levels, like what are some questions you should be asking your doctor in this conversation?
So I think, again, I'm not a reproductive expert at all. So, this is just based on my own knowledge, what I know from the nutrition side of it. But again, I think, your doctors are going to know what levels to be looking for. Those are the three main hormone levels that they're going to be looking for. They're obviously going to be looking for other things such as, sperm motility and things of that sort. But I think, it's important, kind of what you brought up. I think it's important for us to know before we go to the doctor, before, a male goes to their doctor and sees, and gets all of these levels tested and checked. It's important for them to know what are they actually checking. So it's good to know, rather than asking them questions, it's good for them to, ask their doctor to inform them more a little bit about, well, what do these levels mean, and what are some things that I can do in order for them to be at optimal level, to be at their healthiest level. So I think those are all really good questions to ask their doctor. And it's always good to just be informed about, your body, your hormone levels, and everything of that sort. So I hope that answers that question. But I think,
Sure.
it's good to just know, to just be aware.
Gentleman awareness.
Yes, exactly. So there's obviously going to be healthy habits and unhealthy habits, and I think, it's pretty obvious what these unhealthy habits are, but I think it's also important to talk about it as it pertains to the male reproductive system. So we have alcohol. So we know how alcohol is bad for so many different parts of our body, but how does this affect the male reproductive system? So it can actually lower male fertility hormone levels and raise estrogen levels, reducing sperm production, right? So we don't want to raise the estrogen levels because that will lower those testosterone levels. So having too much alcohol can actually affect, the sperm and production of that sperm. Tobacco can cause abnormal hormone levels and damage the DNA of sperm, leading to problems with fertility, embryo development, and increased miscarriage rates, right? So tobacco really does actually have an effect on that. And there's a lot of studies, when I was putting these slides together, everything I do is there's a lot of science behind it, and everything I put together. And so I was looking at some studies, and there's really some really interesting and pretty eye-opening studies out there about the effects of tobacco on male fertility, and it's important to know. And again, going back to awareness, it's important to be aware of that. And then drug use, it can increase the risk of STDs. It can decrease the quality of sperm and sperm count as well as the motility, which I guess goes back to that quality. So all three of these are really, obviously in moderation, it's okay, but we're talking about real abuse of alcohol, tobacco, and drugs. Drugs is obviously something I don't think needs to be done at all, but that's a conversation for another time. But there really are negatives as it pertains to the male reproductive system and fertility that we should be aware of here. Okay, so that was, like I said, we went really, really basic into the reproductive system, and the real crux of it is going to be the nutrition. So uncover nutrients that support men's reproductive health. So a lot of people, I was doing some of this research. I obviously know a little bit about this just from, being in school and different presentations and articles that I've read. over my, becoming a dietitian and through my career, but I did a lot more research on this and I found it really interesting. So I hope you guys do too. Okay, so we have macronutrients and we have micronutrients. So does anybody know the difference between the two? If anyone, I guess it's written in there, but basically our macronutrients are our proteins, our fats, and our carbohydrates, right? So they're all equally important. I'm not going to go into the real difference between them now. We're actually going to be doing that in our July webinar, so you should tune in then. But so we have the proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, and then we have micronutrients, which are going to be our vitamins and minerals. So there are 3 macronutrients, as I mentioned. And we'll go over each group and its different components and its connection to men's health. And then same thing with micronutrients. They contain antioxidants and other compounds that are very beneficial for the men's reproductive system. So our first macronutrient is going to be protein. So protein is one of the 3 macronutrients, an important part of every diet. Studies show inadequate protein intake reduces male fertility. Protein is found in seafood, poultry, meat, eggs, legumes, nuts, and seeds. Now, there's 2 types of protein. There's lean protein and there's fatty protein. We really want to focus generally on lean protein. So we want to try to stay away from fatty proteins, every day. Obviously, again, going back to everything in moderation, it's okay once in a while, obviously, to have a fatty protein. A few times a week is even okay. But the crux of our diet should be, during the week, should be made from the protein sources should be lean protein. And I think that, a good way to kind of, I'm not very into diets and I don't like to use the word diet, but a good diet to follow. And if you're interested in making sure we're getting more lean protein would be the Mediterranean diet. Because that really focuses a lot on lean proteins, nuts, seeds, olive oil, that are all going to be really important as it pertains to male fertility. But as it pertains to the protein, it really focuses on lean protein. So again, seafood, lean poultry, fish. I mentioned seafood, fish, eggs, things like that. Plant-based proteins. So I think that it's a good thing for us to follow. Richard, did you want to say anything? I couldn't tell if you were.
Oh no,
you were saying something.
I'm here for all this. I'm happy that I eat all those things. So I'm
yeah. Okay, good. And then so then we have arginine. So arginine is an amino acid, and it's a unit of protein. It's in protein that increases blood flow associated with male sexual performance. And an example of that is in pistachios, right? There's actually very high amounts of arginine in pistachios, which is why I put that as the source, because it's like when I think of arginine, I think of pistachios. So it's an important amino acid. It's found in other proteins, but this is a good example, and I kind of just wanted to show that example so that people understand.
Outside of pistachios, where else do you find it?
You can find it in there. You can find it in some grains. You actually can find it in rice, mostly in actually non-complete proteins. So you're not going to find it as much in like animal proteins. You'll find it in things like I said, grains. I think quinoa, things that aren't a complete protein. So what a complete protein basically means is that you need to pair it essentially with something else to make it a complete protein. There's not that 8 grams of protein in a serving, which is usually that complete protein. But for example, in rice, there is protein in there, and but it's not going to be that 8 grams. It's not going to be the complete protein unless we pair it with something else. So same thing as pistachios is like an example of that too. There's a little bit more protein probably in pistachios than there is in a grain like rice. But but it's not this complete protein, but there is that arginine in there. So, it's grain, like I said, rice, a few other nuts, seeds. Those are examples of things where we'll find this amino acid.
So I guess my next question to you around that. So it says that, I mean, as you said there, it increases blood flow. So does it also increase like libido and sexual performance, or it's just,
Yes.
okay.
Yes, it does. That's like kind of all connected.
So it's like the natural, so like pistachios, the natural Viagra should be the new.
Exactly, essentially, yes. So that's that. And then we have, okay, so we did our protein. Now we're going to do carbohydrates. So carbohydrates, again, it gets such a bad rep, but carbohydrates are super, super important. We need carbohydrates. And when I say carbohydrates, I don't want you to think I'm talking about, cake and cookies, because again, in moderation, that's okay. But we need things like fruits and yogurt and whole grains and, starchy vegetables. All of these things are carbohydrates, and these all will help us get the energy we need to survive. So specifically, like I said, complex carbohydrates. So those are the complex carbohydrates, and cake, cookies, candy, those are called simple carbohydrates. We can do without simple carbohydrates, but we need complex carbohydrates in order to fuel our body to provide it with the energy that it needs. So specifically, complex carbs like whole grains, as I mentioned, are macronutrient important for overall health and energy levels. And studies show that simple carbs like sugar, foods high in sugar, negatively affect male sperm function. So again, I don't want you to think you're going to eat a cookie and you're going to have, negative sperm function, but we want to make sure that we're getting a good balance, and that most of our, carbohydrates are complex carbohydrates. So there's actually, something that we call My Plate, which shows what our plate should look like, right? And most of it should be, vegetables and fruit, and then lean proteins, and then grains. And then half of our grains should be whole grains. So during the day, if we're, half of our grains should be whole grains, and essentially half of what we're eating, and I say even more of our carbohydrates should be complex carbohydrates. And fruits are going to fall into that category as well, but we want to make sure that we're eating complex carbohydrates, we're eating more of that than we are simple carbohydrates. And that's just a good way. Again, I'm not going to give you numbers, but just knowing that if you're looking what you're eating in a day and you're seeing, well, I'm eating a lot more complex carbohydrates than simple carbohydrates, then you're on track. You're doing good. And then fiber. So fiber is again that like subset of carbohydrates, and fruits and vegetables are carbohydrates that serve as excellent sources of fiber. So if you ever read like a nutrition label, obviously on Whole Foods, we're not going to have a nutrition label. But if you're ever going to read one, you'll see there's carbohydrates, and then under carbohydrates, there's fiber. That's because, again, that's that subset of carbohydrates. So higher intakes, especially of things like dark leafy greens and legumes, they're associated with higher sperm concentration and better sperm motility. So obviously, fiber is important for that, but fiber, I'm going to, talk a little bit outside of male reproductive system as well. Fiber is going to be important for, keeping us regular, making sure we're going to the bathroom properly, that we're not constipated, it's going to be good for our gut microbiome, which actually has a lot to do. There's so many new studies now that came out to show that, our gut microbiome almost controls everything about us. And a lot of it has to do, is very much correlated as well with fertility in both men and women. So, good sources of fiber, making sure we're getting enough fiber during the day is going to be super, super important as it pertains to, the reproductive system and fertility, both for men and women.
So I have a question here, because I think
Sure.
there's folks out here that's probably wondering the same thing I'm wondering. So for those folks who are listening in or watching this, who are watching it later, who, they take their daily fiber, whether it be in fruits or vegetables, but they also do fiber supplements, Metamucil, you name it, anything you can get at the CVS fiber section.
Yeah.
Do those fiber, do fiber supplements have the same impact on high sperm concentration and sperm mobility as dark leafy greens and legumes?
So it's a really good question. I don't know the answer 100%, but what I'm going to say is that it's probably not going to be the same as in terms of getting the fiber. Yes, as it pertains to, sperm concentration and fertility, I will say probably not, because I think that there's so many other vitamins and minerals that are creating this, along with the fiber, kind of all of it together, that is, creating this association. And that's just my, my professional opinion on that. Again, I don't know that for sure. But all of it, so much of it is about all of the vitamins, minerals, everything kind of working together. So I would say that it probably is not going to be as effective. But that being said, majority, the USDA put this out every year. They put this out, majority, and I don't know the number to be exact, so I don't want to, misquote anything, but majority of people, especially in this country, are not getting nearly as much fiber as they need. So if you know that you're one of those who are not, then I would definitely, recommend taking a fiber supplement, even if it's not for the for purposes of reproduction, but just for purposes of making sure we're getting enough fiber for all of the, 100 other reasons that fiber is important, then I would say that that's definitely good. But then, as it pertains to, the reproductive system and fertility, make sure, be cognizant that we are getting those leafy greens and those other, rich antioxidant types of fibers. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense.
Okay, good. I could talk about fiber, by the way, all day. So I'm going to move on because it is like my absolute favorite topic. And I have a lot about fiber on our website as well for those who want to check it out. But fiber is just super, super important for so many things. So before I get on to a tangent, I'm going to move on to our fats. So we have our fats, we have healthy fats, and we have unhealthy fats. And again, I think it's really important to distinguish the difference between fats, because again, so many people hear the word fats and they're like, oh, well, no. I don't need fat, but we all need fats. We need healthy fats. Fats are going to be super, super important, especially for fertility, because it's so involved in hormones. It's really, really important in making sure our hormones stay at healthy levels, making sure that they're balanced. So it's going to be really, really important. So it's also a macronutrient. It's essential to every diet. So you can tell yourself all you want that you're not going to eat fat, but we need fats. So mono and polyunsaturated fats promote overall health. And on the other hand, research suggests that eating many trans and saturated fats can decrease sperm count and concentration in men, right? So trans fat is something we really want to avoid. Saturated fat we'll probably find here and there in snacks that are unhealthy, but yeah, we want to eat that. But trans fat, it's really hard to find anything with trans fat nowadays. If you find something that has trans fat in its nutrition label, you probably should not be eating it, because it is like really not found anymore. And that's what I tell people all the time. Like, if there's trans fat in there, just don't even think about it, because it's just really, it's not good for so many things. And then, as we speak of, male reproductive system, it's obviously, seen that it can decrease sperm count and concentration. So, and saturated fats, we should obviously be cognizant to not overeat that as well. But mono and polyunsaturated fats, those are those healthy fats. So, things like, fatty fish, avocado, olive oil, nuts and seeds, those all have that. And so omega-3 fatty acids are associated, those are those types of healthy fats. They're associated with increased sperm count, sperm motility, normal sperm shape. And really good sources of that would be like fatty fish, like salmon, sardines are a great source, flaxseed, chia seeds, walnuts, And a lot of people, because, whether they don't like fish, they have, they're allergic to fish, they just find they're not eating enough of it in their diet, will take fish oil or omega-3 fatty acid supplements. And that, I don't know if you're going to ask that question, Richard, but I will preempt that with this, is that will definitely be the same thing. And most people don't get enough omega-3s in their diet at all. It's not found in a lot of foods. So it's, I always will tell, people I speak with, I will always tell them to speak to their doctors first, but I highly recommend taking an omega-3 if these foods are not, regular parts of your diet.
The reason why I'm laughing is because I wasn't going to ask that question. And why? Because my great grandmother, who died at 101, every
Wow.
morning would wake up and take cod liver oil pills. The smelly.
I'm going to take cod liver oil pills if I could live till 101.
So yes, I don't doubt the benefit of those pills.
Yeah.
I woke up, I spent my whole childhood life seeing the older people around me taking the cod liver oil pills, and clearly they were folks.
Yeah.
And she has like, I want to say my great grandmother had what, 9 kids, so they clearly work.
Yeah, wow. Yes. We should all be taking cod liver pills. Yeah, so omega-3 is, again, something I can speak about for hours. So I'll stop. But super, super important for so many things. And again, I mentioned this before, they're not in the slides, but they are, these healthy fats are going to be super important for the hormones in our body. We spoke about those 3 hormones in the beginning of this presentation. So just making sure that those hormones stay at, proper levels, eating healthy fats can definitely help with that as well. So now we're going to go into our micronutrients. So micronutrients, as I mentioned again, are the vitamins and the minerals. So zinc is the first one we're going to talk about. So it's a mineral that helps promote healthy sperm production and supports normal testosterone levels. Testosterone, remember, is one of those hormones that we want to make sure we have good levels of. It is found in many foods, including pumpkin seeds, red meat, shellfish, chickpeas, some other beans, and almonds as well. So they're in a lot of foods that we regularly eat. So it's not super, super hard to find at all. Any multivitamin also will have zinc. But I think it's always good to know what the food sources are, especially, in these childbearing ages when we do, think about, having kids and our fertility. Selenium is another one. So it's actually not super, super easy to find selenium. Again, it's just from going back to my vitamins and minerals days of my classes. There's certain foods that you always think of when you think of a certain vitamin and mineral. And selenium, to me, always goes with Brazil nuts. That's like always what it is. And listen, not everyone's eating Brazil nuts, and they're very, very specific. They're very specific foods that selenium is found in. So, like I said, Brazil nuts is probably like the best source. Organ meats. There's a lot of selenium in organ meats, which I know makes people a little bit queasy, but there's a great source of that in there. Seafood, and these are good in increasing sperm motility, which promotes, again, male fertility. So again, selenium we can find also in any multivitamin. I'm not sure if they make selenium supplements on its own, because I've never really been asked about that, nor have I really seen that, but they are found in any multivitamin. So you can definitely find them in there as well. But again, it's good to know what the food sources are.
So basically,
it's always
chicken liver. If you eat chicken liver and
exactly,
and
exactly,
you're making a baby every day.
Exactly. Exactly. I happen to think liver is delicious, but I know that some people,
you know what? I actually really enjoy chicken livers for breakfast. It's a thing. I like it. It's an acquired taste, though. It's definitely an acquired.
It's an acquired taste, and I don't even know so much if it's the taste. I think the fact that it's an organ is what makes people a little bit uneasy about it, which I totally respect and understand. But I think sometimes to get people to eat things, and I know this happens with kids, so maybe it can happen with adults, kind of giving them the background of like why it's good for us can maybe help them try it. we do that with kids all the time, right? We say, oh, this is healthy for our, our skin, and our carrots are healthy for our eyes. And then, it gets them to try it. So maybe if we just do that enough and tell adults, why selenium is a good, organ meats have a ton of selenium, why selenium is important, maybe it'll get them to try it. Who knows?
I think it's all about the taste. If it tastes good, and then I said, listen, just try a bite. If it tastes good, you're in there. And if it's cooked right, winner.
I totally agree. Okay, so now we have our antioxidants, which again, I speak a lot about antioxidants. I've spoken a ton about them. I have some blog posts up there about them as well. Antioxidants are going to be very important in playing a role in fertility, also because it, a lot of antioxidants also are anti-inflammatory. And when women and men are, maybe having some difficulty in terms of fertility, a lot of the times before doing any sort of treatment, doctors will recommend going on a low, anti-inflammatory, high antioxidant type of diet. And a lot of times these anti-inflammatory diets include, foods that are rich in antioxidants. So antioxidants, like I said, they reduce inflammation and can even improve erectile dysfunction. Blueberries contain many antioxidants. Berries in general do, including like flavonoid, in addition to flavonoids, vitamin C and vitamin K. And these all promote men's fertility. So then there's this thing called phytoestrogens. So phytoestrogens are found in soy products, including edamame and tofu. And so phytoestrogens, there is so much back and forth when it comes to phytoestrogens and soy. I'm sure, there's a lot of it when we talk about, breast cancer. There's a lot of it when we talk about fertility for both men and women. So, there's a lot of research on it. Most of the research, though, really concludes in saying that it doesn't really interfere with male hormones or fertility, and it does not increase the risk of erectile dysfunction, even though there are studies out there that kind of prove that they are. But when you look at the specifics of those studies, they're either not, very small sample sizes, or, they've taken place years ago, or there's a lot of limitations to the studies. But the real strong, the studies that have real strong evidence really negate that. So I think it's important to know that because, like I said, there's a lot of controversy as it pertains to phytoestrogens. I really like to stay away from it because I don't like to get involved in the politics of it. But I think it's also important to know that most of the research really does suggest that there is no interference at all with male hormone levels. And, soy is something that we should have in our diet. So don't stay away from that. Does anybody have any questions? Because we're going through this quickly, which is totally fine. But I'm just happy to take questions. And obviously we can stay, at the end, we can take questions at the end as well. But we're getting onto our recipes now, which is the final.
I'm excited about. Ariel. Like I tell you, I'm really excited about these recipes. I'm a cook.
Yes.
Oh
wow! I didn't know that.
Yeah, I like. So if you pay attention to my G,
you should add that to your bio.
Yeah, well, listen, it's my little it's my little secret. So I'm excited about these recipes. So let's get into it.
Yeah. So all of these recipes really kind of highlight everything we just spoke about. They highlight these different, those different aspects of, obviously promoting optimal health for the male reproductive system. So crafting healthy snack plates, right? So benefits. So we minimize waste, requires little to no cooking, easy, convenient, and affordable, which is obviously what we're all about here. Nutrient dense and balanced, and versatile and great for on the go. Great for on the go. So, right, these little snack plates are great for all of these reasons that we just said. So step one is pick a protein, right? So we spoke about what kind of protein do we want to, what kind of proteins do we want to emphasize? We want to emphasize, we want to make sure we're emphasizing lean proteins. So things like hard-boiled eggs, cottage cheese is a great one. Turkey, cold cut turkey, smoked salmon. These are all really, really great. I love smoked salmon because we get in both the protein and we get the omega-3 fatty acids. So you get 2 in 1 there. So I'm a really, really big fan of smoked salmon. I think it's a great snack, and a great protein as a snack as well. Obviously good for a meal too. Okay, so pick a protein, that's step 1. Step 2 is we want to focus on fiber. So add at least 3 colors to your plate, add a crunch from veggies and grains, and opt for berries to keep it low sugar. So that's something that I want to talk a little bit about, just because we have the time anyways, and I think this is an important thing. So not all fruit is equal, in terms of it turning into sugar, right? So to put it simply, there's really no difference between the sugar in just sugar and the sugar in fruit, except that there is, because it's all going to convert into sugar in our body, except that there is when we talk about the fiber aspect of it. So fiber will make it convert more slowly, so it won't spike our blood sugars as quickly. So watermelon, for example, has what we call a high glycemic index, which means that it goes right through us quickly, and it will spike our blood sugar more quickly than, let's say, a strawberry or a raspberry, because a strawberry and a raspberry has a lot more fiber in there, and the fiber helps prevent our blood sugars from spiking so quickly. And that also helps it slow down the process of being turned into sugar, being broken down into the sugar. So, so we want to make sure that we're choosing, fruits and vegetables that are highest in fiber, that are, have good sources of fiber. So berries
Carol,
are really.
is there a way to tell, when you go to, is there attributes that you should be looking for when you go to the grocery store and you're picking out fruits? Is there certain shapes, sizes, colors that help you know the difference?
So it's a really good question. Really, no. Are just kind of things that you can honestly have an app on your phone, or you can Google and just see what's the fiber content of these different fruits and vegetables. And I know that sounds annoying. These are just things, I've obviously been studying it for a long time. So at this point, it's kind of in my head of what is higher in fiber and what's not. And watermelon's always my go-to, because it's really quickly goes through into our bloodstream and, raises our blood sugar pretty quickly. And berries are just a known thing that are higher in fiber, but I think it's, there's plenty of apps on your phone that you can check what the fiber content is, or different, nutrition contents. But you can also very quickly Google it and just be like, what's the fiber content of melon? Oh, okay. Raspberries. Okay. And then you'll just know what's, the better in terms of fiber, what's going to be the better pick. So yeah, I would definitely say just do a quick Google search on your phone if you can.
So expecting dads, you heard that Google is your best friend in this
Yes.
health battle.
Exactly. So focus on fiber. So examples, so we have veggies. So we have, carrots, celery, peppers, cucumbers, tomato, broccoli, cauliflower, snap peas. We want to keep them also raw if we can. We're going to get we're going to get more nutrients from raw. When we cook our vegetables, we're taking away some of the nutrients. I don't want people to think if you cook vegetables, you get no nutrients, because that's sometimes what gets interpreted when I say that. But we do lose some nutrients in the cooking process. So, for a snack, it doesn't have to be roasted, right? If we can tolerate, some people can't tolerate, raw broccoli and cauliflower. So then just don't go for that. Have something that you can tolerate more of, like carrots, celery, peppers, etc. Berries, like I said, I think the highest berry fiber content I believe it's raspberries, and blackberries are pretty similar, and then it's blueberries and strawberries are the lowest, but strawberries still have great amounts of fiber. And I need to say that so that people don't say, oh, I can't eat strawberries. You can, you should, there's tons of fiber. I'm just trying to kind of giving you what those levels are. And then, fruits, so apple slices, banana slices, clementine, peach slices, melons, grapes, there's fiber in there as well. If we are eating things like apple, peaches, we want to make sure the skin remains intact, because that's where that fiber really is. So I know sometimes it's nice to peel off the skin of an apple or a peach. It looks prettier, but especially if the skin's bruised a little bit, but it is really important if we want to get the fiber to keep that skin on, because that's where the fiber is. And then we have whole grains. So we have, pretzels are underratedly a pretty good source of whole grains, toast, crackers, things like that. And these are all great things to put on that snack plate that we mentioned. And then the last thing to talk about is the fats, right? So putting some nuts and seeds. So nuts like almonds, pistachios, cashews, walnuts, whatever type of nut we like. And then seeds, sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds. Those are, I would say the most popular. But other types of seeds like chia seed, flax seed, like if we're going to have, like you see here, there's like a bagel or a piece of toast with avocado on it, sprinkle some of those flax seeds and chia seeds on it, right? We're going to be getting those healthy fats, the omega-3 fatty acids. And you don't really taste much of it. If it, sometimes it has like a little bit of a salty taste. It gives it a little bit of texture, a little bit of a crunch. And you're getting really great fats in there. So I like to just any way we can get these healthy fats, I like to tell people to do that. Olives, green, black, clamato, those are great sources of fat as well. I always tell people, Trader Joe's, and I've seen it in some other grocery stores as well. They sell little snack packs of olives, and they're a great snack things to add, to take on the go as well. And dark chocolate also over 70% though, right? I don't want to just say that it's going to be anything, any type of chocolate, but over 70% dark chocolate is also going to have be a good source of that. And avocado. Don't eat a full avocado and say, oh, I'm being healthy, because there are a lot of calories in a whole avocado. A serving is a third of an avocado, which I think is a little bit not fair. So I usually tell people don't eat more than half of an avocado, because again, these are fats. They are healthy fats. So there's a lot of, health benefits to them, but there are still calories, and they're still, able to cause us to, to gain weight, because they are calories and they're fats. But half of an avocado would usually, that's what I usually tell people to kind of limit it on. And I think it's important just generally to know and to learn serving sizes. And there's a lot of resources for that as well. Right. So for nuts, for example, we want to know, well, we don't want to eat an entire bag of nuts, because again, that's going to be a lot of calories. Same thing for peanut butter. 2 tablespoons is really, or a tablespoon is really a serving. 1 tablespoon is really a serving. So we have to know, it's important to know serving sizes. So we're not oh, I just had 6 tablespoons of peanut butter, that's so healthy. It's also 600 calories. So it's important to just know that.
So Ariel, for that, because in the last slide, you talked about the folks who can't tolerate raw broccoli, or those folks that can't tolerate, raw carrots, so they cook it. I know so many people in my network that like to cook broccoli and like to cook carrots. And I think there's different, levels of cooking it. You can cook broccoli to the point where it is almost mashed, and you can cook it to the point where it has some crunch to it. Is there, I guess my question is, as the more you cook broccoli, or the more you cook cabbage, or the more you cook carrots, do you cook out more and more of the nutrients? Is there
100%, 100%. Yeah. So if you're just gonna, quickly, take out, in the broccoli, let's say, right? If you're just going to take out some of the crunch a little bit, but keep most of it, that's going to be probably just as good. Maybe you're taking out a tiny bit of nutrients, but again, if you're going to roast it in the oven until it's basically burnt, then you're taking out a lot of the nutrients. But you're still getting, good amounts of nutrients. Just, it's important to know that, the more we're cooking something, the more we're taking it out. So yes, that was a good question. And that's everything that I have. So if anybody has any other questions.
Any questions out here?
I'd love to hear. Maybe not.
This was really informative. I took
Thank you.
A lot of notes.
Good.
I learned something new. I've heard this sort of myth about this. There's never been I have never actually had a real answer about cooking food, or how long you cook it. So you gave me something new. And
Yes.
how can folks find out more if you are an expecting dad or you're trying to do some family planning and you're watching this and they want to figure out what's the best diet they should sort of put in place to begin their reproductive journey? Where can they go?
So that's a great question. There are a ton of resources online. The USDA website also has a ton of resources that it can guide them to. There's a ton of resources just about fertility in general for both men and women. There is a lot more for women, I will say. I will be honest and say that. But there are things that you can find for men as well, and just for partners in general. So, there's a ton there. And I would say that's probably your best place to start. The USDA website's always, can is always a good starting place, and it can kind of point you in the right direction. But I think, I think that's really it. And then for many, any other, for anybody who's new here, any past webinars we have a bunch up now on our website. You can look at our past events and follow along. You can subscribe to our newsletter and find out about future events we have, any webinars or in-person events that we may have in the future. And feel free also. We are a nonprofit, so feel free to donate as well on our website, at fairmeals.org. There's a place to donate there as well. And that's really it. So again, if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to take them. We have a few minutes, but otherwise, thank you. And Richard, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, I'm glad I'm a part of it. And listen, I got to tell you, I'll be honest with you. I think that if we're 1/3 of the problem, there should be 1/3 of the resources out there should be about us. It's really sad.
I totally agree with you. There's definitely a gap there. And I think that's kind of why I wanted to speak about this topic, because I realized that when I was doing some research in what topics to speak about, there definitely is a gap. And I think that there's just a gap in general about, also the nutrition aspect of it. So I kind of wanted to do a little bit of research and share with everyone tonight. So thank you.
I'm happy I could be part of this conversation. I think it's so important and so necessary.
Thank you.
Especially as millennials and Gen Xers and other folks and other generations start to begin this and begin or currently in this family planning process.
Exactly.
So thank you so
much. Exactly. Thank you. Thank you. And have a good night, everybody.